Preparations for upcoming flood control construction in Minot might mean you take a detour next week. The road between Roosevelt Park and the Roosevelt Park Zoo is closing on Monday, and it'll be closed until Friday. Chair of the Souris River Joint Board, David Ashley, says there will be trucks coming and going with construction materials. Ashley says they'll be collecting what they need to continue Phase 7 of building the flood walls.
There won't be a lot of significant road closures immediately here, just one mainly that's related to the right in the zoo area.
He says depending on when the weather and contractors line up, full construction will start at the end of March or after.